Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to Season 2, Episode 22 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we help you prevail throughout the 2022 fantasy football season. I'm your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, we're recording. It's Sunday night, September 18th. Week 2 is kind of in the books, but we still have a Sunday night game and 2 more to go later on today, as in Monday when you're listening to this episode. And we're going to preview that today and talk about this past Sunday.
Yeah, I don't know about you and your fantasy weeks, but having 2 Monday night games is double the stress.
You know what? Looking at projections, it really don't mean much. I should have a couple locked up so far. One I'm cooked in. One league I'm absolutely cooked in. I was versing Lamar Jackson and Nick Chubb. That league, not a chance. The other ones I have a chance, and so we'll see what happens. I want to give a quick thank you to everybody who joined our live show on Sunday. A lot of new faces, a lot of new people asking questions, and we really do appreciate that. If you're listening to this show, thank you so much for joining Sunday. Hopefully you see you again this Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And hopefully, you stick with us, throughout this week, next week, as we have some good content for you guys. Today's our Monday show. We're basically going to give you the injury news and latest updates throughout the league. We're going to break down each game and give you our biggest takeaway from each game. And then we're going to go into a Monday Night Football preview. We're going to give you the projection. We're going to say if it's going to go higher or lower to prepare you for Monday night, see if you need that Monday night miracle. Our Monday shows typically go from about 30 to 40 minutes. The rest of the week is usually closer to 20 or 30. So before we get into it, if you are the first time listener, thank you so much. We do the show Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. The audio versions are on all podcasting platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor. Anywhere where you can find a podcast, you can find us, the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. If you're on iTunes, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. It really does help us much more than you guys, really know, besides the 30 seconds it takes you. If you'd rather watch the show like you watch those live shows on Sunday, go to our YouTube channel, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. Each episode is uploaded to our YouTube channel. If you want to connect with us on social media, please do. I'm going to try to use that Twitter more often. PrimetimeFFPod, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast for YouTube and Facebook. Going into the news and injury updates, the biggest one of the week is one that's going to crush Nick in his soul as a Trey Lance truther over here. Trey Lance had an ankle injury in the second quarter. It was kind of an awkward hit where he just got piled up. He was carted off, and it's going to require season-ending surgery. The backup, who they just paid and decided not to trade away, Jimmy Garoppolo, is now the head of the team again, and he's taken him to an NFC Championship and a Super Bowl in 2 of the last 3 seasons. So from a fantasy perspective, you're dropping Trey Lance. If you're in a dynasty league, I think you still have to hold on to him. But from a fantasy perspective, I don't think much changes for the 49ers. I mean, Deebo Samuel had a top 10 fantasy year last year. Ayuk was good last year. Jeff Wilson looked good today. Jimmy G's worked with Kittle. I don't think anything really changes. I think the biggest change from an NFL standpoint, whereas I don't know what Trey Lance's future is with the 49ers and or with the NFL, especially if Jimmy G brings his team to another successful year. Nick, I'll let you give your take, but again, from a fantasy standpoint, Trey Lance is dropped, and I don't think that it affects any player on the 49ers.
Yeah, I think honestly, as much as I love Lance and who he is as a player and what he would do for actual football, in terms of fantasy, I'm giving a big uptick to Deebo. Lance was averaging 13 carries per game as a starter from last year and this year. It was only 1 game this year, but with that kind of volume in the rushing game, they were able to take it away from Deebo, and with Jimmy there now, they're going to have to give it right back. They worked into his contract a clause where if he had over a certain amount of carries on the year, he got a bonus. So it wasn't really saying, let's take it out of your system, more so let's incentivize, if we're going to make you run the ball, we're going to pay you for it. So to me, I think it's just an uptick for Deebo mostly, and the whole rushing game there, because the running backs are going to get a lot of those runs, and Trey Lance got hurt on another design run for him. I wonder when he gets back if Shanahan's going to limit that a little bit more, but we'll see what happens.
I wonder if he starts when he gets back, but that's a conversation for next season.
Yeah.
Jerry Jeudy had a shoulder I'm going to repeat that because my voice cracked. We did a live show today earlier this morning, and I talked all day during football. A lot of talking. Anyway, Jerry Jeudy had a shoulder injury in the first quarter of the game against the Texans. He left the game and was ruled out pretty quickly. We don't know the severity of the injury. We hope to have a better injury update for you, on Tuesday's show tomorrow. I'm sure you'll see an update from Schefter at some point today. It doesn't look serious though. He may get an MRI, but I don't think it's like torn or something like that. So at most, I think he misses like a game.
Yep.
Not super worried. Lastly, James Conner had an ankle injury. It was in the third quarter, and I don't think he was ever officially ruled out. If he was, it was later on in the game, but that doesn't seem serious. He was going to get taped up on the sideline. It's not surgery. It's not broken. He should play next week, but again, we'll need an injury update later on in the week.
Mm-hmm.
So that is all the injury news and updates that we have. Let's get into the weekend wrap. We're going to give you our biggest takeaway from each game. So let's start with Nick's New York Jets against the Cleveland Browns. The Jets got a win. That's good for Nick.
Nick, you did a lot of chirping about those brownies, the little brownies. Guess what happened? What happened? The Jets cooked them in the last 2 minutes of the game.
They did. The Jets had a nice last 2 minutes. They did. But Jacoby Brissett looked good, and so did the Browns. So anyway, Nick, I'll let you go first. What was your biggest takeaway from the Jets and the Browns game?
My biggest takeaway is that there's no takeaway. And what I mean by that is Zach Wilson in 2 weeks is coming back, and we don't know who on the Jets is going to be the number one. Elijah Moore was the number one when he was there. He had chemistry there. Garrett Wilson last week was the fourth receiver that they used in the offense. Number 4, sometimes number 5 behind Jeff Smith. And this week, week 2, they plug him, they play him. He gets 14 targets and 100 yards and the game-winning touchdown. So there's not much to take away from me. I think there's a good amount of talent. I honestly do think there's a lot of talent in that receiver room. But no one's really pushed themselves to say, I'm the superstar here. I need to be the wide receiver 1. So I'm not trusting any of them yet to be the leader and to play them on a week-to-week basis. I think you're going to need like week 6, week 7 before you really know that Jets offense.
I think Garrett Wilson has to be a waiver wire target this week, though.
Yeah.
And that's coming from a guy that's not a Jets fantasy guy. For me, my biggest takeaway is I wrote Amari Cooper is alive. He's still on this earth, and he's still on a football team. He had 10 targets, 9 receptions, 101 yards, and a touchdown. That's great. That's great because if I have Cooper on a dynasty team and I had zero faith in playing him until like week 11. That's great. I know the Jets defense isn't great. I'm saying great a lot. The Jets defense isn't a good defense by any means, but still the fact that Cooper's building chemistry with Jacoby Brissett and Brissett was trusting him to throw the ball to him 10 times. If you're a Cooper owner, that's wonderful. You could kind of trust him now, depending on the matchup. So to me, that's the biggest takeaway. The Washington football team against the Detroit Lions. This game went kind of exactly like how me and Nick predicted it to go in a way. So there's a couple notes we have here. What is your biggest takeaway? Because I do want to touch on some of these notes because I think they're important. But what was your biggest takeaway?
The Commanders are the new Cowboys. They are going to be the garbage time team of the NFL. I
don't know. The Cardinals are an awesome garbage time team.
They're up there, but they got absolutely obliterated in the first half. All those receivers looked poor. Carson Wentz numbers looked poor. Antonio Gibson did not look good. And in the second half, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin all put up double-digit points. Antonio Gibson winded up with double-digit points, and Carson Wentz put up 27. So for the same reason that it reminds me exactly of the Dallas team 2 years ago. It was young CeeDee Lamb. It was young Michael Gallup. It was veteran Amari Cooper. Here you have veteran Terry McLaurin and the 2 young receivers in Samuel and Jahan Dotson. And they're just putting up yards and points that are like what's it called? What's Shannon Sharp's term about the calories? What is it? Empty calories.
I don't know.
Empty calories. That's what Sharp calls them. That's what Washington's going to be this year, which is good for fantasy. Means you can play them.
Carson Wentz is the quarterback 3, and he didn't play well. So there you go. I want to touch on my bigger takeaways with the Lions, but I do want to touch on the football team for a second. Antonio Gibson is not a 3-down back yet. I'm sorry. J.D. McKissick had more receptions than him. Gibson's day was saved by a touchdown. We're not sold on Antonio Gibson yet. At least I'm not. Curtis Samuel, I'm getting sold on. He led the team in targets again. 7 receptions, 9 targets, 78 yards, and a touchdown. That's back-to-back games. Like, if he's on your waiver wire, he has to be a priority. And if he's on your team, I think he's a flex option at this point. I think you can kind of trust him depending on the matchups. One little takeaway before my big takeaway. For those of you that a lot of Swift questions came in, both on the show yesterday, the morning show, and on Twitter. I told every single person to play Swift. If you listened to me, then you had a nice fantasy day from him. I think he had 16, 17 points. If you didn't listen to me, you probably did not have that. You're probably disappointed about that. Play your stars. My biggest takeaway, I was wrong about Amon-Ra St. Brown. When I'm right about something, I'm going to brag about it. I have notes. Trust me, I have notes. When I'm wrong, I'm going to be honest. I wasn't against Amon-Ra St. Brown. I wasn't saying he was going to be a bust on the season, but I did not see a boom. I saw an average receiver you could play on a flex spot depending on the matchup. And I was capital WRONG wrong. 9 receptions on 12 targets, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he also had like 68 rushing yards. In his last 8 games, he's averaged 25 points. Justin Jefferson's best stretch of 8 games, he's averaged 22 points. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a lock every week. I don't care what team he's facing. Like, he's a lock in your lineup. And I wish I was higher on him. I wish I was as high on him as I was on like Marquise Brown or as Nick was on Cortland Sutton. Like, I wish in that range I was higher on Amon-Ra, but I got higher on him as the offseason, as the drafts crept closer. And that's why I drafted him in a league. But that's how fantasy goes sometimes. So anyway, that's my big takeaway. Phenomenal player. Tampa Bay Bucks at the New Orleans Saints. What is your big takeaway from this one?
I wrote it in your notes, Nick. Week 13, the Buccaneers face the Saints again, and I am already anticipating me benching Brady because it is the one team that he has not been able to figure out. I know they walked away with a win, but he has not walked away with a successful fantasy day against them in his 5 starts over the last 3 years. So I know it's not a big takeaway because I didn't want to take much away from this game. It's a weird game.
No, that's fair. Yeah,
competitively, but that's really all I got.
My big takeaway is the rookie receiver they drafted in round 1 that they reached for, Chris Olave. 5 receptions on 13 targets, led the team in targets, 80 yards. He also had a touchdown last week and like 4 receptions, 5 receptions, and I think 80 yards as well. Good start for the rookie. If you drafted the rookie, like this is a guy that I think that can start to break away later on in the season. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown didn't break out to like week 8 or 9 last year. You're already seeing a little bit of a breakout from Olave. He is competing with Jarvis Landry, and Michael Thomas is still the top dog, but I think he could pass Jarvis Landry at some point this season. So that's my takeaway. Definitely a guy you're going to stash on your bench for the entire season and a really good keeper option for keeper leagues and dynasty leagues. Carolina Panthers at the New York Giants. I know what Nick's going with here, so if you want to talk about it, talk about it.
Yeah, I'm going to. I'm going to keep pounding it because I don't love saying I was right, but this is one I kept saying. I called it from a mile away. Everybody said Baker's an improved Sam Darnold. Everybody said Baker's going to make DJ Moore a top offensive threat. Well, newsflash, he put up the exact stat line that he did last week, just with a touchdown in there.
He had the most targets, though.
Same exact amount of targets, 6 targets, same amount of catches, 3 catches, same exact amount of yards, 43 yards. That's ridiculous. That's his usage. Wide receiver 3 on his team at the moment.
I don't really have a big takeaway. I mean, we have a couple nice notes here. McCaffrey's been good, but hasn't been great. He did have 100 yards in this game. He also had 4 receptions, but that doesn't feel like the running back one, the fantasy player number 1. I think my bigger takeaway from the first 2 weeks of football, it solidifies my thought that like I was going heavy in receivers in my drafts this year because I feel like they score more than those top running backs. And I'm just so convinced, like I never want to draft a running back in round 1 again. I just don't. Not when Cooper Kupp is scoring 35 a week. Anyway, so yeah, I guess that's my takeaway is that as good as McCaffrey is, he shouldn't have been drafted in the top 2 because receivers are scoring more than him. I guess that's a takeaway. New England Patriots at the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I want you to go first because I love your headline.
Which one? About Mitch?
Yeah.
Mitch stinks. Like, this is all I wrote. Mitch is horrible, man. Like, we thought Big Ben was bad with the noodle arm. Like, I know the Patriots defense is like half decent, but like the Steelers couldn't even get to the red zone like at all. They lost by 3 to the Pats, and the Pats aren't a good football team. I don't care who's coaching. They're not. Mac Jones is the quarterback. They're not good. Anyway, my bigger takeaways from Mitch being horrible is that Deontay Johnson is quarterback proof because he's just going to eat up targets. Najee Harris had a good day. He had 6 receptions on 6 targets. That's promising. I think he had like 40, 50 receiving yards and 50 rushing yards. No touchdown, but he had a good day besides that. And I know Nick doesn't like, I'm playing Patriots. I don't either, but Jacoby Myers had like 90 yards, 9 targets, and I think a touchdown. So Jacoby Myers may be the only safe Patriot to play.
You see, I was thinking about that until I saw that Nelson Aguilar was the wide receiver 1 on the week from the Patriots system.
Define that.
He scored more fantasy points than Jacoby
But he
Myers.
But he didn't have more targets or receptions.
But my whole point being is you will never know which Patriot to trust on a weekly basis. And like, it's an outlier to see 2 receivers go for 30 yards on a team with an average quarterback. Like, going up against a tough defense, I still haven't seen enough to trust any of them. Damian Harris put up a solid week. Jacoby Myers put up a great week. Nelson Aguilar put up a great week. And I still wouldn't feel comfortable picking any of them up if they were a waiver target. Like, I'm sorry. I just would not trust them in my lineup yet. I need to see 2 or 3 consistent weeks from any of them before I would say, yeah, I can trust them, because I've never trusted the Belichick system. It's never worked for fantasy production. So in terms of fantasy, they're still not playable on a weekly basis to me unless you have major injuries.
All right. Indianapolis Colts against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You could go first on this one because I know you have a pretty strong take on this as well.
Which one?
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about James Robinson.
No, I got the other side.
Okay. What do you got? Let's hear it.
All right. So there is no one. And well, first off, the Colts were absolutely horrendous as a football team against.
Do you know that the Colts haven't beat the Jaguars in Jacksonville since 2014? Apparently that's a thing.
That's a surprising stat.
Apparently that's a thing. Yeah.
How about getting shut out? And the only difference from last week's team, I mean, and they tied the Texans. They didn't play well, but they put up yards. They were able to score points. Was Michael Pittman. And that says to me, just like the Jets said, Michael Carter is the heartbeat of the offense. It's not Jonathan Taylor. It's Michael Pittman. The team goes as far as Pittman goes. Jonathan Taylor was not able to get through the gap because they put 8 in the box because there is no receiving talent over there. They're going to have to make a move for another receiver in football terms for you to actually see good production from Taylor, because I think if Pittman's gone for an extended period of time, that offense looked awful, and I don't know if Jonathan Taylor could put up RB1 numbers if he couldn't do it against Jackson.
Do you think it's a thing that happens on a week-to-week basis, or just a matchup thing? Like, it just...
I would say it was just
okay, Indy should have beaten Jacksonville last year in Week 17. They didn't either. So I wonder if it's just one of those weird divisional games.
But you also swapped out Wentz for Ryan. You swapped the coach. Like, there were so many changes to the team. Their defense even got better going year to year, and they still couldn't hang.
Yeah. My takes about the Colts defense. Again, this is going to be the Nick is wrong portion of the show because Nick was wrong. I told you in my show last week, or the show, on Friday, bust Christian Kirk. I'm not sold on him yet going against Stephon Gilmore. He was a wide receiver 7. I believe he had 2 touchdowns and like 50 yards or something like that. Christian Kirk's playable every week now. That's the reality of it. They paid him a lot of money. I said, follow the money. Like Matthew Berry says, if you pay a guy, you're going to use him. Follow the money. Trevor connects with him. Trevor throws him a lot of balls. That's his go-to target. If you draft the Christian Kirk in rounds 8 or 9, you got a wide receiver 1 as a steal. You really did. And congratulations to you, because I wasn't all in on this one. So props to you, Christian Kirk owners. And yeah, I was wrong about that one. So Miami at Baltimore. I've been saying I'm wrong a lot, so I'm going to go first here and talk about me being right. So before the season started, one of my bold takes was that Waddle could be better than Tyreek Hill fantasy-wise. I said, you're not going to stop throwing to Waddle, and the chemistry is there, yada, yada, yada. Halfway through the game, I'm thinking, you know what? My take is so right. This is something that I can actually back up now. Then Tyreek Hill happened. Apparently, Patrick Mahomes suited up as Tua Tagovailoa this week and started Halloween early because Tyreek Hill had 2 50-plus yard touchdowns, leading him to be the wide receiver 1 at 42 points. Now, Nick is still kind of right here because Jalen Waddle had 40 points. He had 11 receptions, the same amount as Tyreek Hill, 171 yards, 20 less, and 2 touchdowns. The point where I'm right about is that Tyreek coming in is not going to be the alpha dog that's just going to shut Jalen Waddle out. You now have a Dolphins team with 2 wide receiver 1s, basically. You have 2 stud receivers. And Waddle's going to be open a lot because you have to put the number 1 corner on Tyreek Hill. Waddle's a guy you're playing every week with confidence. It should never be a start-sit question with Jalen Waddle at this point. So you know what? I'm going to pat myself on the back a little bit for that one. And my final takeaway, Tua should be rostered. I'm going to say it. Some of these quarterbacks are playing really bad as your backups. Like, why is Matt Ryan a backup at this point on your fantasy team? I'm just being honest. Like, Jameis, as much as I love him as a goofy quarterback, he has like 4 broken bones in his back. Tua should be rostered. He's been good in back-to-back weeks against good defenses, and he came back from like 21 points today. And he's got a great offense. That's my biggest takeaway.
So I want to follow that up with a quick question. What starter would you consider like playing him over? Someone drafted in like the first 10 rounds.
Well, there's a certain quarterback that played horribly against the Houston Texans for 11 points today that I'm going to speak about.
Okay.
Mr. Joe Burrow also did not play phenomenally today.
That was interesting.
That's another one. Matthew Stafford has not looked great. I'm just saying that Derek Carr has looked okay. A lot of these mid-range quarterbacks that have 0 rushing upside, I'm just saying on a week-to-week basis, Tua could be an option.
So my takeaway, and I'm not going to go too deep into it because you also said it, it's admitting I was kind of wrong about Waddle. I thought Tyreek coming in there would wind up being the big dog, and Waddle, he wouldn't get shut down, but he would have a much lower floor. And in the first 2 weeks of the year, he proved that he has been very solid. He's been a phenomenal receiver so far. He is the clear second best receiver in the club. He's debatably the second best receiver in his class with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's phenomenal. He's proving to be a little bit of QB proof early on because Tua is not phenomenal. He just looked really great in this game.
Isn't Chase in their class?
Yeah, so Chase would be 1, and then Waddle would be
so that's a loaded receiver class right there.
Oh my God, it's crazy. And they got Elijah Moore in there, but we can move on.
I just want to mention this at least. The Miami backfield is not touchable. Like I was finally in on Chase Edmonds. He was talked a bit during the offseason, and he played well last week, and I was finally kind of all in on him, and then Mostert becomes the running back 1 this week. Like, don't touch the Miami backfield. I'm sticking with my original take about that backfield. I guess we're done with 1 p.m. games already. Atlanta Falcons at the LA Rams. I cannot believe the Rams blew this game and I didn't win that game in the spread pool. Unbelievable. They were up like 30 points. What's your biggest takeaway from this one?
2 things. You haven't written down, so I do feel bad stealing them, but they were my takeaways as well.
Well, it's 4 of them. I mean, you could take as many as you want.
All right. Drake London is a monster. He is extremely talented. I said going into the draft that he's the best receiver in the class. He's who I wanted to fall to the Jets at 10. And he didn't cook Ramsey, but he looked like he was an NFL talent. He looked like he was a veteran receiver in this league. And that was with Marcus Mariota throwing to him. That's phenomenal. And my number 2 is that Allen Robinson proved why he was drafted this high. He would have had a second touchdown in the game if it wasn't for the
there's a stupid medical timeout. Apparently, people on Twitter were saying it shouldn't have happened. It should have been a second touchdown.
They blew the whistle in the middle of the play, but they said they heard from upstairs that it wasn't. Like, it would have been a touchdown to Allen Robinson, and if it wasn't, right, like they blew the whistle earlier, they would have just ran that play and they wouldn't have known what was happening anyway. So Allen Robinson, to me, would have had a second touchdown, and he would have been a monster for fantasy purposes. Him and Kupp would have looked like a smaller version of Tyreek and Waddle's a game.
And my takeaway from Allen Robinson is that he's going to be a lot closer. This is going to be a lot closer to like Kupp and Woods last year, and Woods wasn't bad than it is to like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans or Waddle and Hill. So anyway, I think Robinson's still playable every week, but Kupp's like just the guy over there. Kyle Pitts, 2 receptions, 19 yards, back-to-back weeks with really bad fantasy performances. Arthur Smith after the game is like, we're not trying to play fantasy football. We're trying to win games. Well, dude, you're 0-2. Like, you competed. And I'll give the Falcons credit. They did compete, but like, you lost both games. Maybe try to get your tight end involved a little bit. The guy you drafted, like at the 4th pick, maybe try to get him involved a little bit. My other big takeaway, the Darrell Henderson show is not here to stay. Like, it's not. 10 carries, 47 yards, and a touchdown saved his fantasy day. Cam Akers, 15 carries, 44 yards. Akers' average was more, so I'll give him that. But then, Henderson's average is more, I should say. But then, Cam Akers had 2 receptions for 18 yards. Henderson had 0. So if Henderson doesn't get that touchdown, he has an awful fantasy day. I'm worried about the backfield becoming a committee, and I'm not sure I'm comfortable playing either one right now, saying as a solidified running back. So, we'll have to see exactly how that goes. I don't know the snap counts. I would love to know the snap counts, but I didn't look it up, honestly. Cincinnati Bengals at the Dallas Cowboys. Man, I said it to my roommate. The Bengals are like the Seahawks, right? A few years ago, the Seahawks were a second half team when they were good. They crapped the bed in the first half, then Russell Wilson would do his Russell Wilson things in the second half, and they would squeak one out or they'd lose in the last minute. And their offensive line is bad. It's like watching a Seahawks game at this point. Talk about Burrow. I know you want to. You're itching for it. You're really itching for it.
Yes, I am.
And you know what, Nick? You will not be able to talk about Burrow like this next week because he's going to be on my boom team and he's going to be a top 5 quarterback against their Jets next week.
Listen, that's fine, but I did warn everybody that Joe Burrow will not finish as a top 10 quarterback on the season. He will have a massive hangover going into the year. The whole Bengals team will. They did in the first 2 weeks, at least the first two halves, or the first half of both the first 2 weeks of the season. So I don't want to just keep pounding that I'm right about this, but it's more so to say, like, Tua is a better fantasy play at the moment than, and I do agree with this. I think Tua is a better fantasy play on a week-to-week basis. It'll always be matchup.
I disagree with that. I think it's matchup. I think it's if you told me I had to play Burrow or Tua for the entire season, I would take Burrow 17 out of 17 times in that.
I would because
if I told you right now you had to play one of them every single week besides their bye week. You had to lock it in right now, and unless they get a season-ending injury, which one?
If I had both on my roster, I would bet that I would play 2 or more games than I would play Burrow.
No, you have to play it every week, no matter what. You have to lock. It's best ball.
But my problem with this has always been that Burrow's floor is so much lower than everybody was saying. The problem is he is a turnover-prone quarterback. The offense is struggling. It will continue to struggle. It may get better halfway through the year because there's so many weapons there. But T. Higgins had 0 points going into the half. Jamar Chase had 10 points on the day. Joe Mixon 11 points on the day. Right? Like, they're not carrying.
They had a bad day. They had a bad day.
They had a bad day, and it's not going to be the last bad day.
Well, we'll see about that. I think the Dallas defense is a lot better than people give them credit for. My takeaway: Cincinnati O-line is bad. Like, I know it's a new line together, but like they look bad. They look like a line that's never played together before, and they didn't play a lot in preseason together as a line. It's going to take them a couple of weeks, and next week is a get-right game. It should be a get-right game. My big takeaway: I said, do not play Ezekiel Elliott. You should not have played Ezekiel Elliott. Tony Pollard looked like the better running back. He was catching balls. He looked faster. He had that breakaway speed. Tony Pollard's the better back without Dak Prescott. That's my biggest takeaway. Houston Texans at the Denver Broncos. Nick, I'm going to take this one first. Do you know what quarterback finished below Joe Burrow again?
Well, since we know the game, I'm going to go with Davis Mills.
You know what? I need to find Davis Mills. Davis Mills.
He's far down. He's far
it was Mr. Unlimited. Well, you know what's unlimited? The fact that you're sucking. Like, you're not playing well. I'm holding him accountable because I told you I would before that Seahawks game, right?
Mm-hmm.
He crapped the bed in Seattle. He crapped the bed against the Texans. This is the Houston Texans. You should have won the game by 25. Your fans were doing the play clock in the fourth quarter. The fans were counting down the play clock because they weren't running plays. They looked horrible as a football team. The Denver Broncos are finishing fourth in that division. I've said that before. They looked horrible as a football team. And Russell Wilson wants to complain about, wants to be the guy, wants to be the man, wants to be elite, yada, 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 wants more say in the offense. Well, you know what, Russ? You wanted all that crap, and look what's happening. Pete Carroll's laughing even when he's down 27 points to the 49ers because he didn't pay you all the money that you think that you're worth. So I'm just saying here, if you're going to, and this is a take that's I'm kind of behind it, and I want your opinion on it. If you're going to make this take about Burrow, where is Russell Wilson in there? Because I don't see much difference at this point. They're both playing the same.
I think Russell Wilson belongs on your bench, and if you have a better play, you could consider dropping him for some of the top waiver guys that we'll talk about. Quick plug, Tuesday's episode.
And I think that's really horrible when he has all his talent around him. He should have gone to a different team. Nathaniel Hackett also sucks. He's horrible. He should be fired.
He's so
Like
bad.
his red zone play calling is atrocious. My big takeaway from this game, and it's kind of lumped in. Cortland Sutton had a great game. Wonderful. The rest of the Broncos, awful. Russell Wilson was awful. Javonte Williams did not get enough workload in this game. The play calling was atrocious. I think as long as Nathaniel Hackett is the coach of this football team, there's going to be problems for your fantasy players because he doesn't know how to coach, doesn't know how to play call. It's a problem. And they're going to have these really tough AFC West matchups. I thought they're going to be shootouts. Nope, they're going to be blowouts. I think Denver's getting blown out by some of these AFC West teams. You don't think that Patrick Mahomes is coming in there and not blowing them out by 20 points? Yep. Justin Herbert, even Derek Carr and the Raiders, like these are going to be blowouts for Denver. So my big takeaway, Nathaniel Hackett needs to go or your fantasy team's going to suffer. What's your big takeaway from this one?
Mine is Cortland Sutton is a monster, and there's only two things that are going to hold him back. Nick talked about both, so I won't go too much into it. It's Russell Wilson. He's been incredibly inaccurate these first couple weeks, and the person who's calling the plays, who has been an awful play caller. It literally reminds me of Matt Nagy's play calling.
That's a good comparison.
Nathaniel Hackett. It's really bad, and his clock management's like Bill O'Brien.
The the clock management and the red zone operation is ridiculous.
They were in a very close game and had no timeouts with like 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
Really
that cannot happen in football. No. You have to try to like not have that.
And another one is Zach Taylor. I don't think Zach Taylor's a bad coach, but when it comes to like inside the 20, he loses his mind. He needs to hire somebody just to do play calling in the red zone. Anyway, and I'm sure it's not easy, but still. Seattle Seahawks at the San Francisco 49ers. My big takeaway from this one is that like Jeff Wilson looked good and you could trust him in the next few weeks. However, they love vulturing touchdowns with their fullbacks and their quarterbacks and everything else, and that absolutely sucks for your fantasy team. What's your big takeaway?
We really did talk about it earlier because we talked about Lance, and it's really, I don't think that you're going to see too much, like, I wouldn't see too much downgrades. I see more upticks with Jimmy G for fantasy for all the skill position players there. I think they will put less points on the board. So I guess there's a little bit of touchdown regression because I don't think they're going to be able to get down the field as quickly. I think Garoppolo clearly has flaws in his game. And I don't think the big plays are going to happen as often, but I think you're going to see a lot more receptions. Full PPR, this is going to be a guns blazing loaded team. If you're in no PPR standard or like half PPR, I think it's an overall downtick. But for full PPR, Jimmy's going to throw more. Those receivers are going to catch more. I said Ayuk's one of the biggest smoke screens in fantasy. I don't think that's true with Jimmy G at quarterback.
All right. Last game that we're going to talk about because Packers-Bears is on right now. Maybe there's a score in it. My TV's over there. So anyway, the Cardinals at the Raiders. And I'm going to take the first take here. These are my three takeaways throughout the game. Cardinals are bad. Capital letters BAD. Kyler needs help. Kyler, garbage time, capital KING, king. Kyler Murray, I don't know what his points were before the fourth quarter. It had to be like 13 maybe. He ended up with 28.
It was way less. It was sub 10.
Garbage time king. He did it back-to-back weeks. I don't love it. It worries me. I think the Cardinals look like a horrible football team, and I think they got lucky today. But I guess a win's a win. I think they need DeAndre Hopkins back. Hollywood Brown does not look like the receiver I hoped he would. He looks okay. Like he's had double-digit fantasy points back-to-back weeks. That's all I got for you. They don't look like a good football team. I don't think they're well coached. And the good news is if they're not a good football team, then Kyler's going to get a lot more reps with Call of Duty come November because they're going to be out of the playoff contention. So why does it matter at that point? So biggest takeaway for me is the Cardinals are not going to be the offensive powerhouse that we thought they could be. And Kyler Murray is really going to have to get a lot of his points in garbage time. And if he faces a really good defense, and doesn't get that garbage time points, it could be muggy out there for you.
So here's my takeaway. And it's all about why I struggled to take Devontae Adams as early as I did. And you could clearly tell Derek Carr is not Aaron Rodgers. And that floor is incredibly low. Without that touchdown, Devontae Adams had the worst fantasy game that he had since 2017. This is the least amount of receptions that he had in a game since October 22nd of 2017, where he only had 2 catches, and that was up against New Orleans. This was up against the Cardinals, who got absolutely torched by Kansas City the prior week. So for me, it's you had to know drafting Devontae, that floor is not there. Derek Carr is not Aaron Rodgers as much as Devontae wants to hype his quarterback up. And you are going to see a lot of low floor games for Devontae Adams, and they're not going to be pretty. If he doesn't see touchdowns and he saw 7 targets this game, that should not happen to Devontae Adams. Devontae saw 17 last week. It should be somewhere in between there. And he's going to struggle a lot more than people are going to be able to cope with. If you have people that are interested or need a receiver, someone with a Keenan Allen, a Godwin, or a Michael Pittman, 3 guys I had to bench this week in one roster because they were all hurt. Like, go try and take a little bit of advantage of that and go try and get some other weapons. Go get one of those guys on another depth piece. I think it's a better move. I could see all 3 of those guys when they come back having more points per game because they have more guaranteed workload and better quarterbacks in their offenses.
All right, those are all the games we're going to talk about. Moving on, lastly, to a Monday Night Football preview. It is Super Monday night. We have 2 games to talk about. We're going to rip through them, projections, over under. So let's start with Josh Allen, 24.4. Like, I feel like he's one of those guys that just always got to go over. I can't go the under.
You always have to predict over with Allen.
Ryan Tannehill, 15.2. I'm going under. This is a run first team, and just I don't like the receivers. I do have the receivers listed here, but I don't really want to talk about them. Tannehill shouldn't be started in any leagues unless it's super flex and you really need to.
No, he still shouldn't be started in super flex. Ryan Tannehill, there's no way. If Matthew Stafford got shut down with Cooper Kupp was the only reason they got yards in the air. If that, you don't have Cooper Kupp. You have 2 rookie receivers as your 1 and 2.
Stephon Diggs, 17.3. Over. I'm going over. There's the Titans defense are bad against wide receivers, and we'll talk about this in a second, but it looks like Gabriel Davis will not be playing.
I'm gonna go with over. I think that's a good line. I think that's probably where he finishes around.
I do need to bring this up. Do you think Gabriel Davis plays tomorrow? The report from Schefter this morning was that it's doubtful with an ankle injury. By tomorrow, meaning tonight, if you're listening, when the show drops.
I would probably say he doesn't. I would look to sit him because I think this is a Super Bowl roster, and the way you get there is you go get that 1 seed, and you're going to have a lot more gruesome, ugly, hard-hitting games with 1 wide receiver 1 versus Gabriel Davis, who in actual football is probably a top 32 guy.
I'm with you on that. How about his replacement, Isaiah McKenzie, 12 points?
I'll go over. I like him. I like what I saw week 1. I like his slot role. I didn't like Jameson Crowder taking some of it, but he's going to get more and more implemented as the season goes on. I think McKenzie's a good play. I think he's a great stash. If you could afford to drop like a KJ Osborne, someone else that's there, like go drop him and go pick up McKenzie.
Yeah, I think he's a good play tomorrow. I think 12 points is right where he gets. I'm going to say under right at like 11, but I think he's getting double-digit fantasy points. Man, I'm going to put these 2 together. Robert Woods at 10.4 or Treylon Burks at 8.1. I'm not playing either. Like, I'm just going to say under. I don't think either of them are as talented as the Rams last week. So the Bills defense is arguably the best in the league. I'm going under for both of them.
I agree. The Bills also got 10 days of preparation. I think Woods is going to be dropped in about 30% of the leagues that he's rostered in after this week.
He's going to be on our stash or trash tomorrow for sure.
Absolutely.
Derrick Henry, 17. I'm going to go with over because I think the Titans, if the only way the Titans actually compete in this game is if he goes over that number. So I'll say over.
I know Derrick Henry's better than Darrell Henderson, but Darrell Henderson saw the highest snap share of any week 1 running back, and he didn't break this number. So it's not that he's not going to break it, but he's running into a brick wall. That's that Buffalo team. And he also saw practically no work in the passing game. It was all Hilliard. So in full PPR formats, I think Henry's going to struggle to hit that without finding the end zone, because he would need 100 yards and a touchdown to do that. It's going to be hard to do either of those against Buffalo. So I'm going to go slightly under.
Devin Singletary, 11.3. My running back number for the Bills will always be under because they don't score touchdowns. And if he does score a touchdown, then that's the only way he hits that over.
I'm smashing the over.
Wow.
James Cook did not look good. Zach Moss did not look good. Devin Singletary looked like a true RB1 last week against Aaron Donald and against Bobby Wagner. I like Singletary in this matchup. I like his upside of scoring a touchdown in this matchup. I think 11 is a little too low of where I would project him to finish.
How about Dawson Knox at 8.6? I'm going to say over because if Gabriel Davis is out, those targets have to go somewhere, whether it's going to be Knox or Isaiah McKenzie. I'll say over, though. I think he can get you a touchdown. I think he can get you 10 points.
Stephon Diggs was clearly the guy they were targeting in the red zone last week. It's not. I don't know if it's going to be the Knox show, but that was against Jalen Ramsey, and I don't know who the cornerback one on the Titans is, but it's definitely not Jalen Ramsey equivalent. So I'm gonna say no on the Knox.
Lastly, for this game, I shouldn't have even put him on here. Austin Hooper at 7. That's a big time under for me. He had 1.2 and got outsnapped by a backup tight end last week.
Yep, under.
All right. Real quick, Nick, your MVP, your bust, and your sleeper for this game. What do you got?
MVP, Diggs. Just Diggs.
Yeah.
There's not much you need to say. He's gonna smoke him just like pretty much like any player would do against this terrible.
If you see me smirking on the YouTube show, by the way, Justin Fields just scored a touchdown and the Packers are losing. That's great. I love watching the Packers lose. I hope it happens. Anyway, I'm sorry. Who's your bust and who's your sleeper for Bills and the Titans?
Bust is Derrick Henry. Like I just said, he needs to score 100 yards or a touchdown to hit that 17. If he doesn't break off a big one, I don't think it's going to happen. And my sleeper would be Isaiah McKenzie if Gabe Davis is out.
I agree on your MVP and your bust. My sleeper is going to be Dawson Knox, red zone machine. He got paid this offseason. I think he's got a chance to get in the end zone. All right. Normally our show would end, but we have 2 Monday Night Football games. So let's talk about what's possibly the game of the week. Minnesota Vikings going to Philly. It's going to be rocking at the Link. I'm really excited for this one. I'm chomping at the bit to watch it. Jalen Hurts 22. This is a smash to me. I don't know if this is in like daily fantasy too, but this is great. 22 up.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit over. I don't think he smashes it because I think you're going to see a little bit more of the not as great of a passer. Week 1, he had the Lions. He looked like a phenomenal passer. I think you're going to see a little bit more of the struggling to get the ball down the field. It's a good pass rush from Minnesota. So I think he makes about most of those points on the ground versus in the air. You'll see another one of those like last year, 150 to 200 yard passing games, but you won't see the monster 30 bomb that you would hope for.
How about Kirk Cousins, 16.7?
I love the over on that. I know Philly's got a good defense, but with Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, that offense is rolling. They're red hot. They're going to put up a lot of points. Cousins is going to put up a lot of yards.
Last week, Jared Goff had 15.5, and I think Kirk's a level or two above Goff. He should definitely hit this over. I played him over Tom Brady this week. Dalvin Cook. I actually don't have Dalvin Cook's number. Oops.
I'll pull it up. Move on to the receiver.
It was when, I'll be honest, I was walking my dog Russ and I was putting in the projections today, and it looks like I missed the running backs. That's all I missed. And the Titans, actually. Let's move on to the receivers. Justin Jefferson, 19.7. He had like 40 last week. I can't not say the over no matter what the number is. I feel like I have to say the over. I'd rather be wrong about the over than the under.
Yep, absolutely. I'll be wrong on the over. I refuse to be wrong on the under.
How about his partner in crime, Adam Thielen, 12.1. I like his over. I think he gets in the end zone. I like his over. If he doesn't get in the end zone, right at 11 or 12.
Yeah, we thought touchdown regression for the past 2 years for Thielen, and he's maintained double digits over the last 2 years. To say he's got an offensive coach and he's not going to get double digit by the end of the year feels a little bit of a crime. So I'll go with the over. I think he can find the end zone.
How about AJ Brown, 15? I think he had like 30 last week with no touchdown. I think this is an over.
Yeah, it should be. He gave him a lot of targets. I think it was 10 catches for 155 yards or something like
128, that. I think, something like that. Devontae Smith at 11. I'm going under. I like him closer to 9 or 10 unless he gets in the end zone, which I don't think he does. So I'm going to go 9 or 10.
Yeah, I'm falling out of love with Devontae with AJ Brown there. Last week, 4 targets, 0 catches against Detroit. I don't like that against Minnesota.
Yeah. Do you have those running back numbers?
I have Dalvin Cook right here. His line is 18.
I'll get Miles Sanders for you. Let's start with that. Slightly under at 16.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the under. I don't love taking. No, I'm gonna go with the over. DeAndre Swift cooked him last week. Dalvin Cook's there.
That's true. Miles Sanders, his projection for week 2. I'm in week 1. This is bad radio. It's okay. His projection is 13.4. No, I can't. I'm not sold on Miles Sanders yet. I can't do it.
Don't trust him. Under.
Let's move on to the tight ends. Lastly, Dallas Goedert 8.7. I think he's got a chance to get into the end zone. I'll say the over.
Yep, I agree with that. I would take the over.
And Irv Smith at 6.6. That's a low number. I feel like he could hit the over.
I would bet over because I think they're going to put points on the board, and one catch for a touchdown breaks 6.6.
Yeah.
If you told me it was 8, I would say under.
I agree. MVP, bust, and sleeper. Who do you got?
MVP, it's Jay Jettas every single week that the Vikings are playing. Bust, Miles Sanders. I hate that ESPN keeps putting him at 13. To me, it's the biggest trap in all of fantasy. Like, you're going to see that number. Like, other guys are going to be projected 10, 11, and you sat waiting for this Monday night miracle. Miles Sanders, all he needs to do is put up 12 points, and it's another Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, Jalen Hurts run the offense game. I'm going to stick with that all year long. And for a sleeper, I'll probably go Kirk because, if Kirk has another back-to-back good game, we're going to be talking about starting him over guys like Russell Wilson and Joe Burrow on a weekly basis.
Yeah. My MVP is going to be Jalen Hurts because I think every time the Eagles play, he's going to be your MVP. The rushing and the passing upside, it's he could win you fantasy games week in and week out. My bust, I think I agree with you on. I agree with you, Miles Sanders. Yeah, and as for my sleeper, I'll go with Dallas Goedert. I'll go with another tight end like I did in the other Monday night game. Lastly, one player from Monday night. Who would be your Monday night miracle if you think you need one? If you need a lot of points, I think you would go Jefferson. I'd probably go Jefferson as well.
So if it's Monday night miracle, I wouldn't.
You need a miracle. You need somebody to score a lot of points for you.
Well, the miracle wouldn't be Jefferson scoring 40 because that's not a miracle. That's everything he's going to do every other week. My miracle would be Isaiah McKenzie putting up more than 20. I think I'll go McKenzie for that.
All right. I'll go with Jefferson. I know it's an easy take, but if you have Jefferson and need like 40 points, he can get you it.
Yep.
All right, guys. That is our show for this week. It's a little bit of a longer Monday show, but 2 Monday Night Football games. We had to talk about them. Thank you guys for listening. The next time you hear from us is tomorrow for we're going to talk waiver wire for Waiver Wire Wednesday. We're going to get you prepared for that. You can find that show on every podcasting platform, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, or you can find it on YouTube, Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Keep checking in with us at social media, PrimeTimeFFPod on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and Facebook and YouTube is Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Good luck tonight on Monday. Hopefully you guys win all of your matchups and get ready for the waiver wire tomorrow. And we're going to start getting ready for week 3.